What if the future of food isn't growing above the soil, but swaying quietly beneath the waves? Picture this. Instead of endless fields of corn and wheat stretching to the horizon, there are fields of seaweed, ropes of mussels, and clusters of oysters rising and falling with the tide. No tractors, no dust, no clouds of pesticide, just sunlight, salt water, and time. Sounds like science fiction, right? But here's the surprise. While you're watching this video, people around the world are already farming the ocean. And the question isn't, is it possible, anymore. The real question is, how fast can we scale it before we run out of options on land? Because on land, the bill is coming due. Our population is still climbing. Our appetite for meat and processed food isn't slowing down. And the climate is rewriting the rules of agriculture in real time. Droughts last longer, storms hit harder, and growing seasons slip out of the old patterns farmers depended on for generations. We pump more groundwater to save one harvest and quietly drain aquifers that took centuries to fill. We pour more fertilizer to boost yields and end up choking rivers, lakes, and coastal waters with runoff. We clear forests to plant more crops, and then act surprised when floods and heat waves become the new normal. For decades, we've treated the planet like it had a second spare in the trunk. Now we're starting to realize there is no backup Earth. And if we keep trying to squeeze a little more out of every acre of soil, we may find out the hard way that the soil can't keep up. So where do we turn when the traditional answer, just plant more, stops working? That's where the ocean quietly steps into frame. 70% of our planet is covered in water. Yet almost all of our food still comes from land. We've gotten used to taking from the sea, fishing, trawling, scooping up whatever swims by, but we've barely tried something different. Partnering with the ocean to actually grow food in a way that heals, not harms. Imagine if instead of fighting over the last fertile hectares, we shifted part of the load to a space so vast, most of it has never seen a plow or a fence. It feels like discovering an extra room in a house you thought was already full. To see how that works, imagine you're standing on a small boat gliding over a calm bay. At the surface, you just see lines of buoys, neat rows bobbing on the water like strings of pearls. They don't look like much from above, but if you could slip beneath the waves, you'd see an entirely different world hanging there. From each line, long ribbons of seaweed stretch downward, catching the sunlight that filters through the water. Between those ribbons, baskets of mussels and oysters hang in tiers, opening and closing as they quietly filter the water. Deeper still, cages hold fish that feed on natural plankton or leftover nutrients drifting through the system. No fields to irrigate, no soil to erode, no forest to clear. Everything is suspended, weightless, using the ocean's own motion as its engine. It's not a farm laid out on a flat plain. It's a three-dimensional garden. And here's the twist. This garden doesn't just produce food, it helps repair the place it grows in. Seaweed soaks up carbon dissolved in seawater and absorbs excess nutrients that would otherwise trigger algae blooms. Shellfish act like living water filters, pulling tiny particles and pollutants out of the water column every time they feed. The structures themselves, ropes, baskets, lines turn into underwater apartments, where small fish, crabs, and countless other creatures hide, feed, and breed. On land, more farming usually means more damage. Out here, if it's designed well, more farming can actually mean more life. That flips the usual script in a way that's hard to ignore. But let's bring it back to something everyone understands: the dinner plate and the paycheck. Seaweed isn't just that green strip wrapped around your sushi. It can be turned into noodles, snacks, broths, seasonings, plant-based meats, and high-protein powders. Mussels, oysters, And clams are rich in protein, vitamins, and minerals. Yet they require no feed, no fresh water, and almost no space compared to land-based livestock. For coastal communities already living with the frontline impacts of climate change, stronger storms, shifting fish stocks, disappearing, catch, this isn't a trendy experiment. It's a lifeline. A few underwater acres can turn an uncertain fishing income into a more stable farm income. A bay that used to be overfished can become a place that both feeds people and heals itself. And look at the bigger picture. We're struggling to feed a growing planet while our best farmland is already spoken for. Pushing traditional agriculture harder is like asking a marathon runner to sprint the last 10 miles of the race. They might try, but you're probably not going to like the outcome. Ocean farming offers a different play. Shift part of the effort to a system that doesn't need soil at all. Seaweed and shellfish can produce large amounts of food and valuable products without competing for land or fresh water. Even a small slice of suitable coastal water, used wisely, could take serious pressure off farms that are already overworked. It's not about replacing land-based agriculture overnight. It's about finally giving it a teammate. If this still sounds a bit abstract, zoom in on what's already happening. Former fishermen have turned from chasing dwindling fish stocks to tending undersea kelp forests and shellfish lines, earning steady income while bringing life back to polluted bays. In parts of Asia, seaweed farms support entire villages and quietly supply the world with ingredients found in everything from soups to skincare. In Europe and North America, pilot projects are testing kelp as a feed additive that could help cut methane emissions from cattle, or as a base for biodegradable packaging. These aren't wild projections from a lab, they're real businesses, hiring real people, sending real products to market. When you see a once empty stretch of water become a thriving underwater farm, it's hard not to wonder how many other coastlines could follow. Technology is accelerating this shift faster than most people realize. Tiny underwater sensors track temperature, nutrients, and currents around the clock, sending live data to farmers' phones. Algorithms can suggest when to plant, where to hang new lines, and when to harvest for the best growth. Remotely operated vehicles and small work robots are starting to take over some of the heavy, risky jobs, inspecting lines after storms, trimming seaweed, cleaning equipment, so a single farm can cover more area without more danger. The image of a farmer hunched over a plow is being replaced by someone in a small cabin, watching dashboards that represent an entire underwater ecosystem in motion. It's still farming, but it looks more like a blend of biology, engineering, and ocean stewardship. Of course, no solution comes without questions. What happens if farms are placed too densely in the wrong areas? How do we ensure navigation routes stay open for boats and traditional fishers? Which species are safe and sustainable to grow at scale? And which might create new problems if they spread? These are serious concerns, and they need serious regulation, research, and community input. The point isn't to pretend ocean farming is a magic fix. The point is that, unlike so many industries that were built first and cleaned up later, we have the chance to design this one carefully from the ground up. We can decide now where farms should go, how big they should be, and who should benefit from them, instead of patching over damage decades down the line. So, where do you fit into all of this? Sitting there with a screen in front of you instead of a boat? More than you might think. Every time you choose seafood that's certified as sustainable, every time you try a product that uses seaweed instead of a more resource-hungry ingredient, every time you share a story about regenerative ocean farming instead of scrolling past it, you're nudging the system in a new direction. Markets move when consumers do. Policies change when enough people start asking, why aren't we supporting this more? One person's choice might look tiny, But millions of those tiny choices are the reason entire industries rise or fall. We're living at a moment when the old map of food production doesn't quite work anymore. The boundaries we drew, land is for farming, ocean is for fishing, are starting to blur. And that might be the best news we've had in a long time. Because if we can learn to treat the sea not as a vault to be emptied, but as a partner to grow with, we open up a future where our meals don't have to come at the planet's expense. Maybe a few decades from now, when someone says farmer, you'll picture not just a person in a field of wheat, but also someone steering a small boat through lines of buoys, checking the growth of kelp and shellfish beneath. Maybe the sound of waves will no longer just mean vacation, it'll mean harvest. The choice we face is simple, but not small. We can keep squeezing more out of the land we've already pushed to the edge. Or we can rethink what a farm can be and where it can live. The ocean is already here, already vast, already full of potential. The next food revolution doesn't have to be invented from scratch. It's floating right in front of us, rising and falling with every tide. The only real question left is whether we're willing to look past the shoreline and step into it.
Every question hides a reason. Every answer reveals a story. If this one made you see the world a little differently, give it a like. And if you want to keep uncovering the hidden why behind our world, hit subscribe and stay curious.